Welcome to our 2025 Luminary Panel. We're joined today by Christa Young, Managing Director of Corporate Development at Accenture, Peter Coffey, Vice President for Strategic Research at Salesforce, and Sebastian Karlsson, CEO of Livia Group. Thank you everyone for joining us today to share your thoughts about 2025 and the tech trends. Let's get straight into it. We've had a chance to see the trends Corum thinks will drive M&A activity this year. So, what are the key trends you are seeing that tech company CEOs should be considering in the year ahead? Let's start with you, Christa.
So the top trend, I have to say, I would be remiss to not focus on generative AI. And a lot of the trends that we're seeing in technology right now all ultimately root back to generative AI. So Accenture last year committed a $3 billion investment in this field. And this has sparked so much interest by our clients and really creativity and enthusiasm about what technology can ultimately help us to achieve. And some of the tangential impacts of that is that we are seeing so much interest in focusing on underlying data. Data organization, making sure that we're capturing data in an efficient way for our clients that is legally compliant and in a way that is ultimately seamless and is helping people. We also are seeing just such a renewed interest in people-centric productivity and how do we really enable people to have the most exciting work at their fingertips, meaning that because of generative AI, a lot of the tasks that maybe were considered more mundane can ultimately be automated. And that is yielding so many opportunities for us to be upskilling our employees within Accenture, most importantly, helping our clients as well. And the change management that goes along with that, and how are we helping people to reimagine their day-to-day jobs and really be able to create a career that is truly interesting, inspiring, and is at the cutting edge of technology.
It'll be exciting to see in the next year how much faster and efficient we'll be working. Thanks, Christa. What about you, Peter?
I try to be a little independent, a little contrarian, but it would be perverse not to highlight the emergence of generative AI from curiosity and novelty to a real industrial and commercial tool as being probably the thing that would be the biggest mistake to get wrong during 2025. But I would like to say that if we're going to use the word trend, there's an expression that the stripe down the middle of the road is an easy thing to find, but it's a terrible place to drive. The middle of the road trend is to say, well, we need to take generative AI and turn that into more of a tool. But it's easy to do that wrong. Eric Brynildsen at MIT a few years ago said the biggest mistake was that we let the Turing test, the ability for a machine to have a conversation with a human, become the definition of real AI, because people are already pretty good at that. We could argue that it would have been much more interesting if we'd said, what do people do poorly that a machine might be able to do better? And for one thing, machines can, in principle, entertain several independent lines of thought at the same time instead of getting anchored on one. And ChatGPT really took what AI could have been, which is like a society of minds, and choke it down to a single thread of conversation. So if you can think not in terms of automation that takes an existing activity and makes it cheaper and more consistent, and instead think of agentification as something that spins up multiple independent lines of inquiry, action, and knowledge, then you'll be busting out of the rut that others may be falling into with a trend of generative AI, and instead really exploring the possibility. The model I sometimes use is the first flying machines that people tried to build were ornithopters, mechanical flapping wings, because they'd seen birds flap their wings and thought, let's build a machine that does that or help some person do that. Well, ornithopters didn't scale. A drone, it does not look like a flapping wing computer. Don't build ornithopters. Look at the things they're doing now with drone shows, where an orchestrated complex of hundreds or even thousands of drones are up there making pictures in the sky. That's not something you would have gotten by building flapping wing robots. So don't build ornithopters, build drone shows.
That's a good answer, Peter. Sebastian?
I think one key trend will be to start using your data. There's a lot of different companies gathering data, but they have not started to use it yet. For example, that's something quite easy for us to picture is to use the data in, for example, a data room to start actually creating insights of what we already have gathered and already paid for. So I think one first step is actually to use your internal data, and the internal data that is actually business critical, to also make automatic business critical insights.
Great. Thank you, Sebastian. Moving on to the next question. Of the top 10 trends that Corum has identified, are there any in particular that you are excited about, and why? We'll start with Sebastian this time.
I will say I looked into the list, and there's one thing that's a little bit tied back to my first answer is actionable analytics. So again, we have all of this internal data, but we haven't thought about how we can actually structure it, and we haven't thought about how we can, or what type of answers could we get out of it. So again, I'm going back to we work a lot with acquisition, we work a lot with legal documents. If we, for example, would draft an SPA, let our lawyers use the old and all of our data to see, okay, if you've actually put in a clause 7.1, also think about 8.3, etc. So I think, again, data and insights from all the internal documents that we have, start to actually use them and make them guide you in your action in your day-to-day work life.
Excellent. Thank you, Sebastian. Christa?
So this is one where I almost have to put my Accenture hat to the side, because what I'm most excited about out of the Corum trends is blue-collar software. So the blue-collar industry is at a really interesting and monumental inflection point where there has not, it's definitely an industry that has not been at the forefront of technological change and enablement. And the workforce in general is much more closer to retirement age than any other industry that we're seeing. So I see the real opportunity is not only in the tools that we are enabling blue-collar workers to use, but the on-ramp to the trades and blue-collar work in general, meaning traditionally the way that you would get into the trades or that type of work would either be through an apprenticeship or most commonly through the union. And I think that there's a tremendous opportunity right now within that industry to be leveraging technology as an on-ramp to train, upskill, and ultimately manage the career experience for those individuals. So I'm really excited over the next few years in particular to see how the blue-collar industry is impacted by technology.
Thank you, Christa. And you, Peter?
Of the top 10 trends that Corum's identified this year, the one that's exciting to me is number 5, which is value chain intelligence. Now, I'll tell you why I find it exciting. That trend statement doesn't just say this is going to happen. It presents a challenge and a call to action that I think people can apply almost every day, because you can ask every time you look at a process, what value is being added here? What value is maybe being lost? And what are the friction, the rust, and the gravity that are being tolerated through force of habit or failure to recognize new capability? There's no question that there's more information flowing. There's more capability to apply automation without human skills of, coding and other things that used to be very scarce skills. There's more ways to do that, but I love the statement that the trend is value chain intelligence, because there are so many places where the friction, rust, and gravity are sapping value or failing to realize new value. And the fact that I'd love to share with people is, do you realize that more than half of the human-made satellites that are orbiting Earth today are Starlink satellites, doing nothing but create new communication bandwidth, and they are still launching in mass quantities. And if we're not doing something with that capacity that does more than just lower the cost or increase the volume of things that we're already doing now, then we're just not trying hard enough to visualize that new possibility. And this phrase of value chain intelligence is not just a trend that's going to happen. It's a challenge and a filter and a test that we should be applying to everything that we do, saying, what is the value that I can be adding at this step instead of things just being handed off from one stage to the next?
Thanks, Peter. What's the number one reason you get excited about a company as an M&A target or strategic partner? Let's go to Peter first.
If I'm thinking about what makes a company an M&A partner or a strategic partner right now, then the thing I would look at is to address what I have called earlier today the friction, rust, and gravity. Are they turning noise into signal by finding new insights in unstructured data, or are they smoothing and accelerating processes by enabling low-code and no-code approaches so that I can move the solution of the problem closer to the people who really understand it? And interestingly, instead of pushing the frontiers of what's possible, which often involves diminishing returns of more cost for each increment of improvement, are they backing off and zooming out and looking at 80-20 or 90-10 situations where you can do a large fraction of the value, not by trying to do more, but paradoxically by doing a little bit less, but at an enormously lower cost, where you meet most of the need with a much simpler or less skills-intensive way of doing things. These are the creative approaches that would make someone, to me, a genuinely interesting partner and not just someone that I'm hiring to do something that I conceivably could do myself. Are people doing what adds value and widens margins instead of just lowering cost? Because right now, the world is full of opportunities to pursue profitless revenue. Revenue targets have never gotten me excited, but creating new value and creating new customers, in the phrase of Peter Drucker, is something that will always get me interested in a potential partner.
Thank you, Peter. Sebastian?
If we're looking at our own portfolio and how we create value through M&A, I will say we are looking at companies actually creating IP on IP. So they create software on other legacy software or market-leading software, because then you have a big addressable market already. You're selling towards existing customers. And it's also easy to do a land and expand go-to-market strategy. And also, if we're looking more at the standalone acquisition, I will say the same, that you're using tech and you're actually been modularizing the tech, so you have a clear path of land and expand. One product or one module of the product to have I will say, a low cost of customer acquisition, and another part of the product to actually expand your footprint within your customer. So I will say that is the key characteristic that we search for when we're doing an M&A in 2025.
That's great, Sebastian. Thank you. Now to you, Christa.
So the one thing that makes me most excited about engaging with another party as an M&A target is an organization and a leadership team that is really excited about change. Individuals that consider themselves to be digital pioneers, who are interested in trying new things, breaking the mold, and seeing ultimately what technology and human ingenuity can do together.
Thank you again, everyone, for being on with us today and sharing your perspectives. We're looking forward to working with you in the new year.